Asher abete perro begerto. Yeta perro begelo que comin. Bacarnish beaderto. Yish beabegelo que comin. Genesh hacho hatarota arushanoto. Benki.
Shalom, shalom, Mishpachah. It's Brother Ari here. I'm Brother Ari. And today we're going to do some scholarly reading. And I'm going to show y'all that Job was an Edomite. And not only was he an Edomite, he was an Arab. And the Arabs are a mixture of Ishmael and Edom. Okay, I'm going to show y'all proof from the actual Tanak, from the book of Job itself, that some of the words that Job uses are Proto-Arabic. Okay, Proto-Arabic. That's why when you look them up in the concordance, it says it only occurs once. And this is the hidden meaning and the hidden secret in the Torah, that you wouldn't pick this up if you did not know the Hebrew language or study the Hebrew language or study Semitic languages in general. All right. So this was an article that Irfan Sahid wrote. He is a professor at the Department of Arabic and Islamic Studies at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. It's called The Ethnic Origin of the Edomites. Now, some of this stuff I don't agree with, but I do agree with them mixing and whatnot. And for Job, in arguing for the ethnic origin of the Edomites, I am only following the conclusion of the late Michael Avi Yonah, who understood that they were an Arab people. Unlike the Hurrians, whom they displaced and replaced, the Edomites were a Semitic people who belonged to the ways of Semitic migrations from the Arabian Peninsula to the Fertile Crescent, such as the Amorites, the Canaanites, and the Arameans. But more reverently, they can be placed among the groups of Arab peoples to be found in Transjordan during this period, such as the Ammonites and Moabites. Now, we both know they come from Lot, but apparently they all mixed with the Ishmaelites, who erupted into what might be called Transjordania tripartita through its two gateways, Wadi Sirhan and Tabikiya in northern Hejaz. The Jews rejected them as Israelites, so what else could they have been but Arabs, in the sense of whatever the term meant in that period. They were as Arab as the Ammonites and the Moabites, both considered Arab peoples. Arabs just means mingle to mix. Perhaps even more so, as they lived even further to the south than either of these two peoples in the deepest southern corner of the Fertile Crescent, immediately adjacent to Arabia and to its two gateways. Part 1. In support of Avi Yonah's position, attention may be drawn to the fact that the term Edom is close to Duma, one of the 12 sons of Ishmael in the Bible, and is also a toponym for a well-known location at the mouth of Wadi Sirhan in northern Arabia. The table of nations in Genesis is not always accurate, but in this case it appears to be so, at least in the sense that it assigns Duma to the sons of Ishmael, who are, it is generally recognized, the Arabs. This is the extent of the value of Genesis. But the toponym Duma is more important than the personal name in Genesis, since if the toponym is identified with the term Edom, then the Arab and Arabian origin of the Edomites can be inferred without the help of the Bible. Now, I don't agree about the origin, because the origin is from Jacob and it's from Jacob and Esau and whatnot. And the thing about it is that they did intermix, they did intermingle. We're going to have another source that says that, and we're going to prove that with Job. Edom is phonetically close to Duma, and the presumption is that the Arab, again in the sense of whatever the term meant in that period, people who inhabited the location moved through Wadi Sirhan, one of the gateways of Balad Asham, and into southern Jordan, whence they were driven into Palestine by the Nabateans. Identifying Edom with Duma not only relates the Edomites to the Arabs, but also points to their exact provenance in Arabia, whence they came. As a result, the Edomites ceased to be a people who suddenly appeared in Jordan and Palestine, whose antecedents before that time remained obscure. As is well known, Duma was the center of an important Arab kingdom whose kings and queens are known, and whose relations with the powerful Semitic empires of Mesopotamia are also known from inscriptions. They were in possession of a strategic site in northern Arabia, hence the campaigns against them by the rulers of Mesopotamia. The identification of Duma with Edom, despite the phonetic closeness of the two terms, may still be doubtful, as the initial plosive sound E or A is missing in Duma. Although two consonants of the trilateral root are present, this brings me to the second new item, which clinches the identification, namely the fact that Duma was originally pronounced Aduma or Adumatu with the initial plosive sound, which is how it appears in the inscriptions of the Assyrian kings. The site or place called Aduma or Adumato thus relieves Duma as its apocalyptic status and confirms the identification of Arabian Aduma with biblical Edom, that of Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Josephus, on phonetic grounds. This carries important implications for the history of Edom, initially in Arabia and later in the Fertile Crescent, where the Edomites settled first in southern Jordan, but were then forced into southern Palestine by the Nabateans. These two stages may be summarized as follows. The identification provides biblical Edom with an Arabian historical background in which it was not a minor entity, but a power in Arabia, the center of which was a strategic site of Duma, later called Dumat al-Jandal. The best evidence for the epigraphic provides details of their life and history. One of the Assyrian inscriptions, that of Esarhaddon, states how his father Sennacherib conquered Duma and captured its queen, along with images of his deities. There having been a respectable force in Arabia might explain why the Edomites were able to retain their identity when they settled in the Fertile Crescent and later produced forceful personalities during the Herodian period. The identification would also explain why the Edomites left their ancestral home in Arabia and moved to the Fertile Crescent. Their center, Dumat al-Jandal, attracted the unwelcome attention of the powerful Mesopotamian empire of the Assyrians, who terrorized the Fertile Crescent and Arabia. As a result, all or most of them decided to move on. The move to the Fertile Crescent might also explain their name. What they called themselves when they were domiciled in Duma is not clear, but after they left it and moved to the Fertile Crescent, they were known as Edomites. All right, so remember, Esau married a daughter of Ishmael, right? From one of Ishmael's sons, and so you see the mixing there. So they had a history of it already. Before they took over Mount Seir. When people or individuals move, they are often referred to by the place they come from. The Arab world is full of families who derive their names from towns or regions they had came from. Beiruti, Tarabusi, Halabi. It is noteworthy that after the Edomites moved, their name retained the initial plus of A or E, a sure sign of their place of origin. But the laws of phonetics eventually caught up with the Arabian toponym, which after centuries appeared eluded and apocalyptic as Duma, a common feature in the colloquial pronunciation of Arabic names. The movement of this Arabian people from Duma in the peninsula to Edom of Jordan and Palestine, as well as their adoption of the name Edom, is paralleled by the movement of another Arab people from roughly the same area of the peninsula to the Fertile Crescent in the 5th century AD. So you had people moving in the 5th century AD. So it's constant movement in that area. This reveals a recurring pattern of migration and well strengthens the conclusions about the movement of the Edomites reached in this paper. This later movement is that of the Salihids or Zochamids, the Arab Fodarati, who lived in what had become the Byzantine provinces of Arabia. They had immigrated from the place referred to in Ptolemy's geography as Zagmais, which the indefatigable explorer Alois Musil located in Wadi Sirhan, and which was correctly identified with the Arabic name of the Daja Am group. This group was also named after a toponym, Daja Am, in the Arabic broken plural form of Daja Ima. The history of this group is doubly relevant to that of the Edomites in the sense that they too were subsequently displaced and replaced by the superior power of another Arab group, the Ghassanids, in much the same way the Edomites were later displaced and replaced by the Nabateans. Thus, a pattern can be seen in the movement of Arab peoples during the pre-Islamic period out of the Arabian Peninsula and into the Fertile Crescent, owing at least in part to political and military pressure. So much for the history of Edom in its Arabian phase, which the identification of biblical Edom with the Syrian Arabian Duma or Adumatu has made possible. Biblical Edom will now be discussed at the context of light shed upon it by its Arabian predecessor. Part 2. The second stage of the history of Edom is well known, as it became part of Roman and Jewish history for some 2 centuries, from the settlement of Pompeii in 63 BC, and is mentioned in literary rather than epigraphic sources, which had been the case during the first phase of its history. The new light thrown on the history of the Edomites by the identification of Edom and Duma calls for a new approach to their history and is a challenge to the cultural analyst. The new approach consists of disentangled Edomite history from Roman and Jewish history, placing it in pre-Islamic Arab context. Thus will be truly a new approach to Edomite history, which historians have typically linked to Roman and Jewish history, recorded as it was by a major Jewish historian, Josephus. Thus, this process should not be difficult, as the Jews utterly reject the Edomites as non-Israelites who overthrow their own Hasmonean dynasty and through Roman power ruled oppressively. Indeed, the same Edom became the name for hated Rome. So see, it became the name for hated Rome. And, people like to use it and say, Edomites are Rome, Edomites are Rome. You got to be careful about some of those extra books. Okay, some of those extra books contradict the Torah and the Tanak, just saying. Edom became the name for hated Rome itself in Jewish writings. What then is the new context within which the history of the Edomites as an Arab people can be understood? The main factor which affected these Arab peoples during the period in question was the constant gravitational pull which the Fertile Crescent, with its material and cultural wealth, exerted on those who lived in the arid Arabian Peninsula. This pull set in motion waves of migration from a peninsula into the Fertile Crescent, which resulted in the profound transformation of these peoples once settled there, right? Because people were getting displaced and replaced, right? And even in the Bible, it tells you that the Northern Kingdom got displaced and replaced with another people. Over the course of the last half century, I have discussed 3 ways of peninsular Arab migration into the Fertile Crescent during the 4th, 5th, and 6th centuries AD, and it is within the context of these migrations that Edomite history can most fruitfully be evaluated. Within the context of these migrations, the Edomites stand out as unique, as of all these people, they were the ones who underwent the most profound cultural transformation. From their origins as Arabian people living a primitive life in Duma, they became a private community that was profoundly influenced by the 3 major cultural events of the Fertile Crescent at that time: Judaism, Hellenism, and Romanization, right? So those were the 3 things that they were facing against, right? So indeed, some of the results of these powerful influences have survived in that region until the present day. This is illustrated by the career of Herod the Great, a lover of building unparalleled by any other personality in this pre-Islamic period of migration, who in so doing set the tone for his descendants. For Judaism, he rebuilt the Second Temple on the grandest scale, even though he did so to curry popular favor. As a Pilhelni, he erected monumental buildings associated with Greeks and Greek culture, not only in Judea but also in other parts of the Near East. He also built structures associated with the Romans and founded polis which such as I guess ports such as Caesarea and Sebaste, in honor of Augustus. His descendants followed in his wake, who contribute much to the urbanization and pacification of the region, as well as to the eradication of paganism. In the spiritual history of the Arabs, the Edomites represent the adoption by an Arab people of first Judaism, then Christianity, and finally Islam. Right, and that's why we're going to do some more. We're going to do some videos showing you where it says Esau is the end of the world. It's showing you the rise of Islam, which is what you're seeing right now, the rise of all the Islamic nations and Islam, because Esau is the end of the world, and Esau hasn't came to power yet. Jewish monotheism was also adopted by other Arab peoples, but the Edomites were the ones most profoundly influenced by it, since they became completely Judaized, at least formally, although the rulers may not have been the most pious of converts. It was in their adoption of Judaism that the Edomites wrote a chapter in human history, as they left their mark not only on Jewish history, but also on its daughter religion, Christianity, as their culture was flourishing at the time, which witnessed the birth of the latter. Thus they have left their mark on two world religions. After their contribution to Judaism, the Edomites became involved in the fortunes of Christianity and influenced a number of important events in the history of that religion. Herod the Great is associated with the massacre of the innocents. His son Antipas and Tetrarch of Galilee and Perea beheaded John the Baptist. Agrippa I, his grandson, treated St. Paul well, contributing to the decision to send him to Rome for trial as a Roman citizen, an important decision in the life of the 13th apostle and an apostle of the Gentiles. This reevaluation of the Edomites as an Arab people inevitably calls for discussion of the biblical Job in his book. So much has been written on him, his ethnic origin, and on his book as a masterpiece, not only of biblical Hebrew literature, but even of world literature. An extravagant claim has been put forth that his book was merely a translation of an original Arabic text. So that's one thing that scholars are saying, that it was a translation of Arabic text. But we do know it has Arabic words, and I'm going to pull those words up for you. For a minimalist like myself, however, the following facts are relevant to this discussion. There is no doubt that Job was not an Israelite, as demonstrated by toponomical statements in the first chapter. He belonged to the land of Uz. Sabians attacked his oxen and his children in verse 11, the onomasticon of his three friends and their provenance in verse 12. All those are pointing to like the children of the East, are hidden things that anybody from that culture will understand that Job was an Israelite and he came from the East, from the Arabs. If the hypothesis of an original Arabic text is to be rejected, it should be noted that the Arabisms have been noted in the book by Hebraeus, which only an Arabic lexicon could explain. Right, and so we're going to cover some of those words after we finish this third one. We got this right here, and then this right here, and then we're going to go into those words. For those two observations, it follows that Job was an Arab, who other than an Arab would have used Arabic in pre-Islamic era, before it became the universal language of Islam when non-Arab Muslims used it. Job's Arab tribal affiliation remains unclear. However, his God is none other than the Most High, Yudhe, which links him explicitly to Judaism and reveals him as an Arab convert. From these three premises, it is natural to conclude that Job was an Edomite who belonged to the Arab people who adopted the religion whose God was Yahweh, namely Judaism. As my conclusions on the Arab identity of the Edomites concur with those of Avi Yonah, so do they concur with those of Robert Pfeiffer, a distinguished Old Testament scholar who argued that Job was not an Israelite but an Edomite. He did not say, however, that he was an Arab, but if Avi Yonah's conclusion about the Arab identity of the Edomites are accepted, to which the identification of Edom with Adamatu in Arabia proposed in this paper may be added, the inevitable conclusion is that Job was both Edomite and Arab. If Herod is the greatest figure in the political and cultural history of the Edomites, Job is his counterpart in their literary history. As an Arab, he could figure, albeit in a vague, ambiguous sense, in the history of pre-Islamic Arabic poetry, which is shrouded in obscurity in this distant past. However, regardless of his ethnic origin, the Book of Job remains as it must part of Hebrew rather than Arabic literature, as it is in Hebrew that the work has survived, notwithstanding the Arabisms within it, right? So what are these words that are in Arabic, right? So Proto-Arabic word is in the book of Job. You have Job 6:6. You have the word, actually, hold on. Proto-Arabic words in the book of Job. So Job is written in archaic, non-standard Hebrew, right? It is saturated with Arabic cognates, Arabic forms, North Arabian vocabulary, and South Levantine desert idioms. This linguistic profile matches the Uz, Edom, Arabia region where Job is set. Job 1:1, Lamentations 4:21. All right, so classical Hebrew normally uses Canaanite vocabulary. Job frequently rejects those forms and instead uses Arabic type groups and morphology. Classical Hebrew normally uses, it normally uses Canaanite vocabulary. So Job is the hardest book in the Bible. It is not poetic difficulty. It's the dialectical intrusion. Why? Because it has a bunch of Arabic borrowed loan words and morphology. So the first one is Job 30:29. You have the word Ya'ana, right? Ya'ana. So it means I have become a brother to jackals, right? So the Hebrew normally you would use the word tan, but Job uses Ya'ana. In Arabic, you have Na'ama. It equals an ostrich, a desert animal. This is not a Canaanite Hebrew word. It is Arabic desert zoology. Okay, Arabic desert zoology. Now, Job 6:6. You have the word halamut, right? And it means, is there a taste in the white of the egg, right? So this word appears nowhere else in Hebrew. And then you have halama, which means membrane, and ham, egg white. So that the morphology is Arabic. It's not Hebrew. This is not Hebrew morphology, okay? It's not Hebrew morphology at all. Then you have Job 39:5. You have the word peri, right? Peri. Who let the wild donkey go free? In Hebrew, normally it would be Hamor, right? And then you see that also when Jacob is talking to Hamor, right? About Dinah and what was it? Sechem or something like that. I forget who, the one that did the grape to his daughter. Right, but Job uses peri, right, and fari. In Arabic, you have faras, which is a wild horse, and you have fur, which is a free roaming horse. This is Arabian steppe vocabulary and imagery. Okay, horse imagery. In Job 30:6, you have the word Arabim. It means they will dwell in the desert ravines. Right. This is not the West, Arab. This is Arab equals desert nomads. In the Arabic, Arab is steppe dwellers. Job is describing Arabian tribal people. So when he goes into that and starts describing stuff, he's describing things from the Arabs. Proof that he is an Arab. He's an Edomite Arab. Job 19:7. You have the word Hanoti. My breath is repulsive to my wife. This verb does not exist in biblical Hebrew, but it does in Arabic, right? You have the word kanika, to choke, to suffocate. Again, this is an Arabic physiological verb. So Job's grammar is also Arabic style. Job uses verb, subject, order. Same thing Hebrew uses. It uses long imperfective chains, broken plural patterns, non-Canaanite suffixes, right? And all this matches with North Arabian and Aramaic Hebrew, not with Jerusalem Hebrew. right? Not with Jerusalem Hebrew. So Job, this is the proof that Job came from that area, that he was an Edomite from that area. So Job is not a late poetic invention. It preserves pre-exilic Arabian Hebrew, the kind spoken by Edomites, Temanites, Buzites, and Uzites. These were Semitic cousins of Israel living in Arabia and Transjordan. That is why Job sounds more like Arabic than Psalms, because it comes from the same linguistic family. If you read Psalms, it flows differently than what Job does. Okay, so that's what we just showed you, and that's what we just read in the article. So the conclusion: Job contains real Arabic vocabulary, morphology, and syntax. Why? Because Job was composed in an Arabian Semitic dialect zone. It is the oldest linguistic stratum in the Hebrew Bible. Okay. So the article we read today, I'll include a link down to you in the description. It was the ethnic origin of the Edomites by Irfan Saeed, professor at the Department of Arabic and Islamic Studies, University of Georgetown. All right. So if you like the information that I provide to you, please hit the like button and please leave a comment, share. Let us know what you thought. If you don't agree, hit the thumbs down, leave a comment, let us know you don't agree. All right, but wipe your feet off when you come into my house and hit the thumbs up button. All right, it's good for the algorithm. We're trying to push good information among the Israelite community, and we're trying to get into that algorithm. All right, so I appreciate every one of you that watched the video and watched it to its entirety. I appreciate all my subscribers, all 113 of y'all. And I have another video that will be dropping on Thursday. This one should be coming out Wednesday, and then we might have one Friday and Saturday. We'll probably have the Shabbat video, the Torah Parsha, for Saturday, and then Sunday we'll be working on more videos for the next week. All right, so we're going to start. Going to be a couple of videos coming out on Esau and how they are the Arabs and intermix. You have the 12 princes of Arab princes of the Gulf states, like Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Qatar, UAE, and all that, and then you have other Arabs that are not part of Ishmaelites that are Esau. Okay, like like Saudi Arabia and all the rest of them, and they are the the prophecy for them to be the end of the world or whatnot. They're all mixed. Esau is the end of the world. Jacob is the beginning that follows. So they're about to get ready to rule. Okay, you're already seeing it right now. They formed their Arab alliance. The prophecy in the Quran came true about the Muslims aligning with Rome. A lot of people thought that in the Muslim world thought that would be the Vatican, but it wasn't. It was the Greek Orthodox Church in Russia. Okay, and so that prophecy in the Quran has been fulfilled, and as you can see, the Muslim countries are gaining strength and modernizing their weapons and things of the sort. Okay, so we're going to be focusing more on Esau and the perpetual hatred for Israel and anything with Israel, converts included. So, and then we're going to, I'm working on a presentation to show you guys, some end time prophecies with the Muslims and whatnot that you need to be aware of. Okay, so until the next video, this is Brother Araya signing out. Lehitaro. Peace and blessings, family. Shalom, shalom.
Aser abete perro begerto, yeta perro begelo que comin. Bacarnis beaderto, yirs beabegelo que comin. Genes hajo catarrota arrosanoto, bequini se tarro meganai. Aser hamita berro begeronto, yitem perro begelo que comin. Wagen is bij aan bikken robo, is bij aan bikken longen komen. Geen is a gago gaan daar rota ursonoto, wenkie is het rome gaan